Hello and welcome to the very first episode of the Power Apps series. In today's video, I'm going to be giving you an overview over Power Apps, what it is, how you can use it for your organization, and things to look out for in terms of licensing when you create your applications for your organization. So firstly, I'm going to start off. I'm going to go to make.powerapps.com. I'm going to wait for this to load, and it'll show me the home page for the Power Apps platform. Now here you will see we have a few options at the moment. So we have three buttons to start creating an application. We have a list of applications which we can currently access and run from within our environment. And then we also have this navigation on the left hand side where we can actually start creating and using certain aspects of the Power Platform. Now at the top right here, you'll notice the environment I am in at the moment. Now when it comes to Power Platform environments, essentially what they are is they are a container over or around the data that is in it. So in terms of Dataverse, if you have a Dataverse environment, what that means is the data is stored within that environment, or you could think of it like a database. So the data will be stored in that particular database. So if you have users in a certain environment, they can't access the data in another environment unless they have the specific permissions to access that. So in my demo tenant, I only have one environment called demo, and this is my default environment. Now typically this will either be named default or your organization name, or if your organization has implemented some best practices, it will be called personal productivity. Now for the demo purposes of today's video, I'm going to be doing everything in this demo environment or this default environment. So I'm going to start off by going to create, and this is where you begin creating apps for your organization. Now there is quite a lot of options to start off with. So firstly, you can start with data. If you already have developed your schema in the Dataverse, you can begin creating an application based on that data. If you want to create an application from the data that you already have in a SharePoint list, or lists I should say, if you have an Excel spreadsheet that already has data and you just want to make an app based on top of that, then you can do all of that from here. Down a little bit lower, we do have some out-of-the-box templates provided by Microsoft. Now you will see some pretty useful ones which you can consider to use for your organization, such as Help Desk. There is another one for Leave Request, the Leave Request app. And there are a few different applications as well, and you'll notice that they're either Canvas app or model driven apps. Now when it comes to the Power Platform, there are two applications, model driven and Canvas app. Model driven, you get a lot more out of the box. So it's essentially a administration type of application, or it gives you a view where you can easily edit certain items, update their fields or their status, have a business process, so only certain fields show at certain times and so on. A Canvas app, you have a lot more control over the UI. So that's typically a customer facing solution or end user solution, as I like to call it. Now that doesn't mean that's the case for all cases. There are many cases where you might have a model-driven app for your end users, and there are many cases where you might have a Canvas app for your end users, for your administration users as well. So it really depends on the requirements of your solution as to which one you go down. Now, what I'm going to do today, there are a few applications which come installed in my environment, and I'm going to show you that. They are model-driven applications. So let's go to the fundraiser application. So once I wait for this to load, I'm going to click on, so you'll notice on the left hand side we have a navigation similar to a web application that you might have, or any other enterprise application your organization is using at the moment. and we do have some options up at the top of each of these pages that we can click on the left hand side. So I am going to click on fundraisers, click on new, and I'm going to call this my first fundraiser. This is an example fundraiser. Okay, fantastic. I'm going to click save, not save and close yet because I haven't quite finished what I want to do. Then we have this donations tab, and this is where we can start to add donations that are directly related to this fundraiser. Okay, so model-driven apps are built on the Dataverse, which means they do have underlying tables, essentially like a database. So they can relate to each other, one-to-many relationships, many-to-many relationships, and so on. And you can relate these tables to each other to create a larger application in the end. So you can imagine when you have a database, you can create really any application on top of that. The Dataverse is essentially that database with more features. So I'm going to go ahead and add a donation. And my donation amount is going to be $10. First donation. And it's going to be from me as well. Save and close. Okay, now we have our first donation amount. We also have a timeline, so this is where maybe you want to send emails to certain people, have phone calls with other organizations. You can track all of this via the timeline. And then we also have many other related entities which we can add and edit in regards to this fundraiser, such as activities, documents, connections, and so on. Okay, total donations last updated. Now this will update. So in the Dataverse you do have fields which can or are known as calculator or roll-up fields, and they're updated on a system scheduled task to update these fields on a regular basis. So I'm going to click save and close, and now you will see my first fundraiser is now listed in the list. There is also donations and so on. So this is just an example model-driven application. You can see the amount of out-of-the-box functionality that comes with an application like this. If I go back to here, I can click an item and you'll notice all of these buttons up the top will change depending on the context of my current view. Now I'm going to show you what a Canvas app looks like. So I'm going to click create, and let's start off with a template. I'm not going to build any applications from scratch today. That will be in a future video. But today I am focusing on just showing you what it's capable of and the differences between model-driven and Canvas apps. So let's go ahead and open or create the Power Apps Training Canvas app. I'm going to call this Power Apps Training Demo. Click create. Now on the left hand side here, you will notice we do have a list of squares at the moment. These are your screens, or commonly referred to as pages. Now when you expand a page, you can see all of the elements inside. For example, we are on the about page or screen. If I click on an element, you'll be able to see exactly what it's selected, and you can expand each of these groups to see exactly how it's built, what it's doing, and so on. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead and publish this application. So if I go to the top right, I can click publish this version, and then if I go back, go to my apps. So now I go back to here and I can click share, and I can share it with other users within the organization. So this is where I can start typing their email address to share the application with another user. I can also type in a message and then send the invitation to access the app, and that user will now have permissions to use the application within the Power Platform. Now, there are a few areas which you should be aware of in terms of licensing. So, Canvas apps are free as long as you're using standard connectors. So what is a connector? A connector is essentially a connection to a data source. Now, standard connectors, for example, data sources such as SharePoint and Excel. And your premium connectors or your paid connectors are data sources such as SQL Server and the Dataverse. So when you go to share your application, you need to make sure if it has any premium connectors that those users you are sharing the application with have the appropriate licenses to be able to use the application. Now, model-driven apps are very similar. They do require premium licensing for users to access the application. So you need to be aware of that before you start making a model-driven application, especially if it's going to be broadly used within the organization. So that does wrap up today's video of giving you an overview over the Power Platform, or Power Apps in particular. Stay tuned for the next episode where I'm going to be diving into Canvas apps and creating a Canvas app from scratch, making sure I follow best practices and make sure it is responsive as well. So stay tuned for that. See you next time.